All right, good evening, everyone. Again, thank you so much for coming. Really, it's awesome to see people from all over the world come together so close to Pesach and to be able to learn together. I just want to make a quick announcement before we start. We are in really difficult times right now. It's not a shock to anyone. And some people particularly are going through individual challenges. So I want to make a note. This week is the yahrzeit of Mordechai ben Moshe Chaim. So the learning and the connecting that we're going to be doing this evening should be an Ilui for his neshama. Also for Batia Bat Elisha, who recently passed away. It should be an Aliyah for her neshama. And a dear friend of mine here in Beit El, his brother passed away from coronavirus in New York. And his name is Zalman Yaakov ben Avraham Yisrael. So we do that with his memory in mind. And you know how it works, but I really do hope what inspiration and what learning and what growth we have tonight is able to assist and to help them and to lift up their souls who are no longer here with us. And with that in mind, I would like to share something, kind of deep and close to the heart with you guys tonight, and hopefully make a space where you guys can share as well. And I want to start with a story. Now, probably all you guys have heard of Rabbi Yonatan. Rabbi Yonatan was the great student of Rabbi Nachman. Sorry, we probably have heard of Rabbi Nachman, but you may not have heard of Rabbi Yonatan. Rabbi Yonatan was his great student and also who wrote down all of his works. So, and after Rabbi Nachman passed on, Rabbi Yonatan carried on and was the Rebbe of the Hasidim. So one of the activities or unique things that Breslov Hasidim do is they go out and they do hitbodedut. They'll go out to the forest, to the edge of the city where things are quiet, and they'll talk to God, just open up their hearts and just talk to God. And there's a lot in Breslov Hasidut that's written about hitbodedut. So there's a story that one of the Hasidim came to Rabbi Yonatan and said, I'm afraid to go out at night to the edge of the city, to the forest, where there is no one. I mean, I'm scared out there. It's quiet, it's dark. There could be robbers out there. I can't do it. So Rabbi Yonatan told him the following story. He said as follows. One time there was a small city, and inside the city was a sweet Jew named Shmulik. And Shmulik was known as the biggest fraidy cat in all of the town. Unfortunately, one night, a band of robbers came into the town, and everybody, including Shmulik, left and ran out because they were so afraid of what would happen. So the next morning, they all came back together after the robbers had left, took whatever they had wanted to take and left. And they said, Shmulik, where were you last night? And he said, I was in the graveyard. And they were shocked. How could the most scared guy in the whole town spend the whole night in the graveyard? So he said, I was so scared of the robbers that I forgot that I was scared of the graveyard. And so Rabbi Yonatan said to one of his Hasidim, he said, sometimes a bigger fear can help us forget our little fears. And my big fear is that I'll stay stuck, that I won't be able to grow, that I won't be able to move, that I'll stay stuck where I am. And that big fear overcomes any of the smaller fears I have about going out into the woods and the forest at night. So that's what I want to talk to you guys about tonight. I want to talk about getting unstuck in all of our lives, in our personal lives, and as a nation, as a world. And really the Seder is the night for us to experience that, to get unstuck. And the way that the rabbis, that our sages understood the way to get unstuck on Leila Seder was through, number one, telling the story of Yetziat Mitzrayim. There's a special power and something unique to telling the story itself. And number two, the format of the Seder, which we're going to spend most of our time focusing on, which is question and answer. In other words, question and answer by telling the story, or going through the story of Yetziat Mitzrayim, but not just telling it as one tells over a story, but doing it in the fashion of question and answer is the way that our sages understood for us to be able to get unstuck, to be able to open ourselves up and to move forward and to tap into the unique spiritual energies that are available to us only on Seder night. So that's what I'd like to talk to you guys about. Now, it'll take us a little bit to get there. Now I want to share some sources with you guys. Okay, so I just put in the chat a Google Doc. Hopefully everyone is able to open that. Just gonna adjust. Okay. You guys got it? Yeah? Okay. So let's start at the top. I always like to start in the Chumash itself. That's where everything starts. So we might as well start there tonight. And this is, again, specifically focusing on the idea of questions. So even the Chumash itself, it seems to understand that there are going to be questions that are going to be aroused from this story of Seder night. So it says in Shmot Yud Gimel Yud Daled, V'aya ki yishalecha bincha machar le'mor ma zot amarta elav b'chozek yad v'hotzeinu Adonai Mitzrayim mibeit avadim. So there's going to be a time when your son will say to you, right? This is right on the tips of them coming out of Egypt. Right? He's going to ask you. He's going to ask you, your son's going to ask you, what does this mean? What is all this? And he's going to answer, it was with a mighty hand that the Lord brought us out from Egypt, the house of bondage. By the way, this is only one of the 4 psukim, the 4 different passages that the rabbis used to extrapolate the Arba Banim, the story that we see in the Haggadah of the four boys, 4 different children. Okay, but we already see in the Chumash itself, and the reason I just wanted to point to this is there's already going to be a question. There's already going to be something aroused and interested about Seder night. Maybe it's because they didn't experience it. Maybe it's because it's so wild. I mean, it's hard to believe. Maybe there needs some clarification, right? I mean, 10 plagues, sea splits. It's something that really that requires a lot of explanation, how something like that could happen, especially because it's so miraculous. But for whatever reason, the Torah seems to say, don't worry, your son is going to ask about this, and when he or she does, children are going to ask about this. You say, that was a mighty hand that the Lord brought us out from Egypt, from the house of bondage. Okay, that's just to kind of dip our toes in and to understand that the Torah itself understood that this night was connected to questions. Now, the Gemara, the Talmud in Pesachim, which has a lot of discussion about the Korban Pesach mostly, but at the very end, there's a discussion about Seder night, and the whole last chapter focuses and emphasizes all of the different customs that we do on Seder night, this very unique night, and specifically the unique mitzvah of Sipor Yetziat Mitzrayim, of telling the mitzvah of coming out of Egypt. So, then we'll just go right to the English. This is in Pesachim. The Gemara asks, why does one remove the table? Now, what happened was, just before after they dip the karpas and we pour another cup of wine, they used to have little small tables. Right? It wasn't that they had the nice big tables that we had today. They had these kind of couches, which is why we do the leaning, and they had these little kind of like TV tray dinners. Like little tables in front of them. So at the Seder, all of a sudden, getting ready to eat, we dipped our vegetable a little bit. We had our appetizer, we had our karpas. And all of a sudden, they're pulling the tables away. It's like, and pouring another glass of wine. Like, wait a second, I'm ready to eat. Like, it's like, if we were all sitting around the table, forks and knives and plates, and someone came and took it all away, we'd be like, I'm ready to eat. Why are you taking my plate away? So the Gemara asks, why does one remove the table? So the school of Rabbi Yanai said, so the children will notice that something is unusual, and they will ask, here? Why is this night different from all other nights, the Manish Shana? So the Gemara relates a story here. Abaya was sitting before Rabbi when he was still a child. Abaya and Rabbi are very famous Havrutot when Abaya got older, but Abaya is also the nephew of Rabbi. So Abaya was sitting at his uncle's table for Leila Seder, and he saw that they were moving the table, and he was hungry, and he didn't want them to remove that table. And he said to those removing it, "Hey, wait a second, we haven't eaten yet, and you're taking the table away." So Rabbi's response to his nephew was, you have exempted us from reciting the question of Manishtana. This is a really, really weird Gemara on several levels, and I want to kind of peel this back a little bit because it really is strange. What seems to be happening is he's asking a question that is somehow not related at all to Seder night. Wait a second, where's my table? It's not a question that has to do with coming out of Egypt. It's not a question that has to do with telling the story. It seems to have no connection at all to what's going on. Only thing he's saying is, I'm hungry, I want to eat. Why are you taking my plate away? And all of a sudden, somehow he did something so wonderful that Rabbi says, now we can skip the Manishana. I hope they can still sing it. It's such a nice tune. Hey, well, I'll just mention this story because it's one of my favorite stories to tell over on Seder night. When I first made Aliyah, I lived in Baca and I went to Ulpan Etzion. And I don't know if it's the same as it was, same now as it was then, but at that point, it was just an incredibly diverse group of all young people in their 20s, early 30s, all together learning Hebrew together. And I guess a little bit, similar to the Ulpan that you guys did at Hebrew U. But people coming from literally all over the world. I think there were 28 different countries that were represented at the Ulpan. And it was interesting, at the breaks, so all of the Colombians would go out and they would have these kind of special drinks. Looked like there was like basil on top of it, these like coffee drinks with this weird straw. And all the French people would hang out together with their Converse, and the Americans, whatever we do. Everyone would kind of split up amongst their own groups, during the breaks, and we'd all come in together and learn. So there was kind of a separation everyone felt, and also it was just easy to speak your own language during the breaks. But they would have different tekasim, they would have different, holiday celebrations around the time, depending on the time of the year. And they had a special one for Pesach. And they brought us all in the big amphitheater together, and they had one of the teachers on the keyboard, and she played the Manishtana. And it's the tune that we all know, right? Manishtana laila mikol haleilot. And everyone sang together. I mean, the Ethiopian guy, the French guy, the Colombian girl, everyone knew that song, Manishtana. It was unbelievable. And we were all singing it together. It was this incredible, sweet moment of unity and connection. And it reminded me, wow, this song, Manishtana, and this simple, sweet, childish melody, like carried us for the last 2,000 years and holds us. There's something so special about Manishtana, about questions and answers, but really questions, and about this tune that really held us together all these years and brought us back. Here we are back in Israel. Crazy, right? So Manishtana is something that's so central to the whole Seder night. How could it be that, Abaya saying, hey, you took my plate away, you took my little table away. Why would Rabbi say to him, now we don't need to say Manishtana anymore? We got out of that. Okay, what was it that happened? Again, this is a question, it's not a question about, when we came out of Egypt, tell me about, the plague of Dever and how exactly that worked. Was there a bear or a lion? It's a question that seemingly has no connection to anything. He didn't have to say Manishtana anymore. I'll throw it out to you guys. Anyone have any ideas? Why would this initial question that he asked, hey, where's my plate? Hey, where's my table? Exempt us from having to say Manishtana. Anybody have any ideas?
I mean, in general, that a child is interested in asking and noticing, because I feel like what the the point is that your child should notice what's going on, because that's like what the whole point is, for it to be funny and have these like strange things that we do so that the kids are aware.
So that the fact that the kid asks a question, that illustrates that they're there, they're present, like they're logged in, so to speak.
Right, exactly.
Yafé. So in other words, Shira, just to extrapolate, tell me this is what you're saying, it doesn't matter necessarily the content of what the question is per se. It's that they're there right now, okay? They're like logged in, they're live, we see their face, right? They're on Zoom, they're there. The mic is off, the face is there, and they're ready to get involved, yeah? Yafé, very nice. You have some help in that answer, which I'll get to in a second. Anyone else have any other answers? How can it be significant that the child asks a question that's not connected to Seder night, right? And it's somehow so meaningful that we skip a part of the Seder. Any other ideas? And just to extrapolate a little bit more from what Shira said, it must be that the question is so important, we don't even necessarily care about the content, which is weird. Like if someone gets up on the table, you know, if you have a really eccentric leader of your Seder, or maybe you guys are leading it, and you get up there and someone jumps on the table and starts, you know, and everyone's like, oh my gosh, you know, like, Rayut, why are you jumping on the table? Like, what's going on? And Rayut says, oh, now we can move on to the next part of the Seder. You did it, right? You're logged in, you're connected, you're asking. Something about the power of a question, though, that I want to get to more with you guys, that I think is happening here, right? That there's something so important and central and powerful about a question that without it, we couldn't even move on. And to the extent that we start the Seder really with, I mean, we have the initial invitation, and we introduced the matzah, but that's just really because the matzah is, for those of us who were with us last week, matzah is the bread of discourse. Matzah sets the table, so to speak, to let us know that it's time to talk. But really the story begins with Manishtanah Alazeh. That's the beginning of our Magi, the central part of Seder night, of the mitzvah of Sipor Yitzim Mitzrayim, is Manishtanah, is this question, right? So there must be something so central to the extent that we just have to say, wait a second, something's different tonight. By the way, the first question that we ask is what? What's the first question on the Manishtanah?
Manashna Halalas Emikol Halilot.
What's so different about this night? Yeah. Yeah, keep going, lady. You want to say more?
Well, it's Shevikol Halilot Anu, like I don't
You
know.
You're getting warm. You're getting warmed up. You're ready to sing.
Right. Yes, excited. Also, I don't know if it's any different than what Shira said, but the part of the purpose, well, not the purpose, part of the wording of the Manashana is just talking about the way we conduct ourselves at the table and what we eat. And so the fact that in this Gemara, it's someone's noticing that the table is not present, like that's, I don't, so it's not just that the child is asking any question, but it's specifically a question about the way that we're eating. I don't know if that's different than what Shira said, or if it's just like a subtle additional nuance.
No, that's great. No, that's great. I think you're pointing out that just to compare a regular Friday night Shabbat meal with Leila Seder, already, okay, everything's nice, but we got this weird plate in the middle, right? Which Leah explained to us very beautifully on Thursday for those who heard. This weird plate in the middle, we got this dry, crunchy bread, or if you happen to be lucky enough to get some Yemenite matzah, you got that nice, soft matzah there that looks like a flatbread. But whatever, it looks totally different. And, we're taking the table away. In our day, we lift up the Seder plate, we move it, we move the matzah. Hey, wait, what's going on? So you're right. I think the idea that the central focus being on the table, right, and we're switching things around on the table, that's going to most kind of arouse suspicion or question from the kid, right? At least at our table every Friday night, everybody knows that the Kiddush cup, my Kiddush cup and the kids' Kiddush cups are in a very specific place, the challah plate, the challah cover, right? It all looks exactly as it looks every Friday night, but suddenly something is really, really different. We're changing things up, right? And in order to awaken questions. So I think that's good. In other words, the table is the focal point, and then that's the place where we're kind of messing with things in order to elicit a response. Yafeh? Very good. Okay, great. So now let's see what Tosfot has to say about this. The Bali Tosfot is not just one person. It was a kind of a school, even several, that spanned several generations. And the main members of that school were Rashi's grandchildren. And they are the main kind of Ashkenazi voice during this time in the Middle Ages, I believe the 11th and 12th century. Okay, so Tosfot likes Shira's answer. And they say as follows. Why is it that Manishtana doesn't have to be said now? What did we do that allowed us to move on past that? So they say, Kadeshi Akil, oh sorry, this is the Hebrew on Matil, where we quoted from the Gemara. Kadeshi Akil Atinok V'Yishal. What does that mean? Klomar, Umitoch Kach Yavo Lish'ol B'Shal Devarim. We're trying to waken them up. We know it's not on target exactly, but we want them to ask more questions. But that what we asked that is where you said we pulled up the table, it doesn't get us out of saying the whole manishtana. It's rather just the very beginning of it, what Tosfot has to say. In other words, we didn't answer all the questions, but we at least opened and we can kind of skip a little bit into it. Manishtana b'layla hazeh. We already got that question under our belts, and now we can move a little bit forward. But what comes out from Tosfot is that the beginning of the Seder has to be, the essential facet of it has to be with a question. Okay? So we delved into that a little bit, and on that point, I want to go a little bit further. Any questions or points so far? So far, so good? Okay, great. Now, this is a text that always perplexed me, and it always bothered me. And this year, I mean, like, I could cry when I read it just because of the situation that we're going through, just because of how relevant it is and how really sad it is. So this is the Rambam Hilchot Chametz U'Matzah, where he discusses the mitzvah Sipor Yetziat Mitzrayim. So let's read it in English for everybody. On the first night of Pesach, one should introduce some change at the table. So the children will notice it. The children who will notice it may ask, saying, why is this night different from all other nights? Leah, this is good for you because the changes happen at the table, right? So that's good. Okay, great. That's the frame where everything's happening. And in turn, he will apply, this is what happened, right? Start to tell the story. Once the question has been asked, that creates a space, and now the story can begin. Now, this is ideally in a situation where you have parents, kids, grandparents, right? The normal Seder that all of us are used to, or most of us are used to, I should say, as we grew up. If he has no son, his wife should ask the questions. Okay, so doesn't have any kids, his wife asks. If he's not married, so then he should get together with his guy friends, right? Have a bromance Seder and get together, and they should ask one another the questions. Even if they're all scholars, right? My 5-year-old, in his kind of fun, a little bit chutzpahdik way, was like, we were talking about this the other day. It's like, if I already know the story, why do I have to do it again? Right? Like, why do I have to go through this whole night? Just bring me the chicken soup. Why have to go through the whole thing again? Somehow, even if they're all scholars, there needs to be this experience of Seder night. That's something to keep in mind as well. Now, this is the part that breaks my heart this year and that I never understood before. So the Rambam says if one is alone, he should ask himself, I always thought to myself, it's so weird. First of all, who's going to be alone on Seder night? God forbid anyone should ever be alone on Seder night. Someone should not have a family to connect to, should not have a community, some sort of educator or rabbi or rebbetzin or someone in their lives they can go spend Seder with Mamish. What kind of recluse does a person have to be alone on Seder night? Right? And second of all, if this person is alone on Seder night, God forbid, like, why would he or she be sitting there in the room by themselves asking them money shana v'layla zeh? That's so weird. It's hard, but I know, there are students who are alone this Seder night. That will be alone this Seder night. I have family members who will be alone this Seder night. We always have my wife's cousin Brian comes and spends Seder with us. My sister will be alone on Seder night. It's really mamish. It's really, really heartbreaking. It's going to be a very, very different Seder, I assume, for the majority of Am Yisrael because of that this year. But if we put aside, the sadness of what it is for the grandparents, or the widow or widower grandparent, or the student, or the young person, or whoever it is who has to spend Seder night alone, if we put that aside for 1 second, it just strengthens the question that we're asking. If a person is alone, why would he or she have to sit there and ask themselves a question? They should just read the story. They should just go through it. You start, okay, Avadim Hayinu. If you really want, you can sing it. You can sing all the songs. You can stay up as late as you want. You can sing Hallel, no matter how bad your voice is. Maybe the neighbor will care, but that's about it. But why must there be this questioning of oneself, even when no one else is there? Okay, so that just really strengthens the question that we were asking so far. Anyone want to offer something now at this point? Now that we've I've kind of really, hopefully, clarified the question and how all these texts are really pointing to the centrality of the question. Any other ideas about it you guys want to shoot out before we see a little bit of some deeper answers about how to relate to this?
I have an idea.
Great.
Well, the whole point of the Seder and Pesach in general is to, as we said, to remind ourselves of coming out of Egypt. And that's a mitzvah for every day we're supposed to actually follow. So in order to fully be able to live coming out of Egypt again, we gotta get to ask these questions. Because also eventually if we don't start with that, we won't be able to understand the rest of the Magi and be able to come out to tell us. So even if you're by yourself, it's just something that you have to do. It's just.
Okay, great. So what I heard two things here. Gosh, I couldn't pick up who you were from the voice. Kind of fun. So first of all, you mentioned that every day there's a positive mitzvah to be able to remember the coming out of Egypt, right? So that's true. There is the saying of Kriyat Shema, of the reciting of the Shema, which is the remembering of coming out of Egypt, every day, twice a day. That, I think, has a different quality to it. It's interesting to bring that up and kind of compare that to what we're doing, the Sipur of Yetziat Mitzrayim. The daily remembrance of coming out of Egypt, I think, has a different quality to it. In other words, we're supposed to remember, yes, and know that the coming out of Egypt is essential to our identity. This is who we are. But on Seder night, we are in it. We're living it. We're experiencing it. I didn't put this in the sources, but the Rambam in the same section that we just saw says very beautifully, and he takes from the Gemara, but he adds a little bit. He says, "Chayav Adam leharot et atzmo ki'ilu hu yatsa miMitzrayim ata." He adds a few important words there. It's not just that we have to see ourselves as coming out of Mitzrayim, but we have to leharot, kind of show ourselves or illustrate ourselves or act it out. Ata, now. The whole experience of the Seder has to be something of, I'm in it now. I'm not remembering what was. I'm not understanding my identity as based on a historical event, which you could say the daily remembrance is. I'm in it, right? And to the greater extent that we're in it, that we're really plugged in and locked in, the more experiential Seder night is, the better. By the way, I think another reason why Chazal are so insistent on question and answer, because that is really one of the ways to feel in it, right? Like we talked about, I'm logged in, I'm open, I'm there. Like Hineni, I'm present, right? So that has to be something that we experience. And we talked about this before, all the little items on the Seder plate, the egg, the shank bone or the wing, the maror, the karpas, the matzah, all these are props, which allow us to step into the experience of leaving Egypt. There's a very nice, I believe it's a Sephardi, maybe a Yemenite custom, where everyone takes a little bag and throws it over their back and gets up out of their chair and walks around the Seder table as if they're leaving Egypt in that moment. So I like to do that with the kids. It also breaks things up, gets everybody standing up, move around a little bit. All right, everybody, we're leaving Egypt. You get up, you walk around, you march a little bit, right? It's a lot of fun. The more we can experience and feel it and live it, then the better we're doing. So I think that's an important contrast between the daily mitzvah and the unique mitzvah that we have on Leila Seder. So I think that's a great direction to go. Okay, now I want to share a little bit of Chassidut with you guys. And the beauty of Chassidut, especially in general, but especially at this time, when we are a little bit imprisoned, we are a little bit self-focused, we're not really around a lot of other people except online. Chassidut is really focused on tikkun haprat, our individual work, our individual spiritual work, why we're here in the world on a personal spiritual level. So this is going to be helpful to answer our question. So if you look at Pri Tzaddik, which is Rav Tzadok Cohen, the last source there on the bottom of the page. I have this in English, sorry. He says, "V'hainu shetzarich liyot derech she'ela v'teshuva, haben shoel malishana v'aviv mashivo k'mo shekatav v'hainu shebelayla tzarich adam." Okay, so here's where he starts. So first he explains, okay, malishana, we has to be through question and answer. V'hainu, that is, why do we do this? What's the point of it? Shebelayla tzarich adam le'argish b'nafsho חדשות שצריך אדם לראות את עצמו כאילו הוא יצא ממצרים. He's adding a little bit here. He says that on this night it's important for a person to feel in his soul something new. Right? It can't be that we did Seder last year. There has to be something new, totally new experienced here. And that is the experience of feeling like I'm coming out of Egypt. What does that mean? V'hainu sha'az, on the night of Leila Seder, hirgish adam benafsho, hirgesh chazak. I guess we'd say in modern Hebrew, hargasha chadasha, that a person feels a really strong emotional pull. Shiatza mina yetzer, that he came out from his Yetzer Hara. In other words, Mitzrayim is connected to the word Mitzarim, the narrow places, and beyond the telling of a historical story, there's a unique spiritual energy that's available to us once a year on Seder night, and that is the ability to take out the Yetzer Hara, so to speak. In the very first class we did, we talked about the seor, the yeast, the leaven in the bread is considered like the Yetzer Hara. And on Seder night, we take it out. We're free from it. We have this sense of personal freedom that we can experience on Leila Seder, and we can step out from that. So Rav Tzadok says, you got to feel it. You got to experience it. It's like, jump up and hallelujah. I'm free from those challenges, those constraints, those pressures that bring me down, that keep me from expressing myself in the truest way possible. On Seder night, we can jump beyond that. By the word Pesach means to jump. We can jump beyond that. We can leave those constraints. And he continues and says, "V'chen tzarich kol adam la'argish בכל ליל פסח כאילו הוא יצא ממצרים, ולא יהיה הדבר אצלו כדבר הרגל, לאכול מצה מרור כדומה. He can't just sit around and just, all right, we're eating matzah, maror. No, there has to be an emotional awakening that happens here. If we're sitting passively, if we're not feeling a sense of real hitlavut, of connection, of awakening, of spirituality, of emotion, something's missing. We don't get it. We have to open ourselves up and awaken ourselves in the greatest way possible. And he says and continues, V'chen kol ikar takanat tibul rishon. Why do we dip? Why do you take the karpas, dip it? What's that about? Amru shi ki hechi delahaihu hikera latinoket. That we said in the Gemara was just as a way to waken up the kiddies to make sure that they're logged in, like we were saying. But we don't just want them logged in. We don't just want them present. We want them awake to their truest self, to the self that isn't held back by any of these constraints that normally hold us back from expressing who we are. And he says, "V'hainu she'itorer adam manishtana elal hazeh mikol halilot she'yesh shinoi b'zeh v'yetzeh me'ahergel." That on Seder night, when we ask this question, we ask it in order to wake us up to the fact that tonight is different. And that's kind of the whole thing. In other words, according to Rav Sadok, and it's so simple, but yet so powerful and difficult to achieve, the beginning of the Seder and the essential point of the Seder is to just wake up and realize tonight is different. Tonight is an opportunity that I don't have any other night of the year to step out of all those narrow places and constraints. If I don't ask the question, Manishtana, there's no opening, there's no space, there's no realization. I step into hergel, I step into pattern or habit. So the power of a question, says Rav Sadok, is it wakes us up from the patterns that we go through each and every day. You know, like, why do you do that? The power of a deep relationship. It could be a friendship, you know, or a marriage. I find this all the time. You know, my wife will ask me, why did you do that? I don't know. Never thought about it. But the moment I start contemplating that and thinking about why did I do that? Oh, it was because I was hungry and I was angry. It's because I really was upset about something that, you know, one of the kids did, or, you know, I was holding, whatever it is. That question is an opening that makes a space for me to be able to engage within myself in a way that I would never have before, to step out of the normal patterns of life, whatever it is I'm walking in. Hey, why'd you do that? Do you realize tonight's different? Do you see everything around you? Are you awake to it? Do you realize that tonight there's something special going on? If you don't realize that, you're going to miss the whole thing. So we ask you the simplest of questions to make sure you're logged in and you're awake and you're spiritually open to the possibilities that are waiting here for us on this very special night. Not just that were, but that are now, that are happening right now, right in this moment. Okay, any questions or points about what Rav Sadok is trying to share with us about the power of questions, the opening, the shift that can happen when one asks us a question? Everybody should be like jumping up and dancing. If not at the beginning of the Seder, at the end, you know, Shana Baba Yerushalayim. No matter that we are, you know, in this terrible crisis, and no matter what people are going through, hopefully we can step into some of this, you know, the simcha of Seder night. There's one more idea that I want to share with you guys, and this really ties back to the beginning, to the story of Rabbi Yonatan that I mentioned. Couldn't find this per se, this text per se, but it's in my Haggadah here. I guess it shows up backwards here, but it's a Haggadah of Rabbi Nachman. My wife got this for me last year. It's really, really sweet, and it has lots of beautiful pictures in it as well. And it has some distilled teachings of Rabbi Nachman about Seder night. And he has one about questions and answers that I found to be very profound and related to the questions that we're asking tonight. So I won't read the whole thing, but just a little bit. So he says, Rabbi Nachman says, Kasher anu me'izim lehitgaber al hapachad v'lish'ol she'ela emitit v'kasher, anu lema'aseh yotzrim b'tochenu makom l'shinoi. So when we have the strength, we have the power on Seder night to stand up and ask ourselves a difficult question, so then we can create a change. We can create a space for change. In other words, the 4 questions are not called the Arba Shelot, they're called the Arba Kushiot. A Kushia is really a difficult question. It's not, why did you wear that shirt today? It's a deep question. It's a powerful question. So Rabbi Nachman sees Seder night as an opportunity to ask ourselves difficult questions, very personal questions. This is, by the way, another opening that's possible with a smaller Seder, when we're either by ourselves or with people that are closest to us. We can ask ourselves or those around us a very personal, intimate, deep question. And then what happens when we do that? Hashela yotzeret b'tochenu chalal. b'tochenu chalal. Oto ein anu yodin kitzad demale. Chalal asher bo yuchal livaled inyan chadash she'efshar lanu litzmoach u'ligdol. So Rabbi Nachman says that what happens when we ask ourselves a question, and any question, it creates a halal, this open space within us. And it's a difficult question. That space is created and something surprising can kind of come out of there. Right? This goes back to the question that we asked, wait a second, why would the person who's alone on Seder night have to ask him or herself a question? What purpose would that do? That sounds like a person sitting in the room talking to themselves. No, but when one asks himself a question, in any way, and especially if you ask it in a deep and meaningful and personal way, there's a space that's created. And something powerful, something unknown can come out from that space that we didn't expect. Something unexpected can come out from that space. So Rabbi Nachman continues, he says, Pesach hu chag cherut. Pesach is this time of freedom. It's an opportunity for new life. What do we have to do? We have to ask a difficult question, a kushia, a hard question. And we have to stand there in that space, in that empty space of not knowing what's going to come out when we ask ourselves that difficult question. Right? I don't know if anyone has read anything or been involved with anyone who's going through a 10-step program. But those type of situations, I'm giving an extreme example, but someone who's going through an addiction, those questions that come up, those difficult questions, what is my life going to be like without the addiction, right? What's going to come out from there? Those are hard questions. And we don't know necessarily what's going to come out from that. But it's really true for all of us. When we ask ourselves a deep question, a hard question, for some of us considering the situation, it might be like, what am I going to do next year? What if I lose my job? What if, the economy God forbid, what if the economy keeps tanking and I don't know. So Pesach is a chance to be free. So Rabbi Nachman seems to be saying that freedom is the courage to ask a difficult question, even though we don't know what the answer is going to be, and to stand there bravely, kind of at the edge of our consciousness, and see what evolves from that. It's really cool to be a human being because we can't have this back and forth dialogue with ourselves. What do you think? I don't know. I'm not sure. I'm going to have to think about that. I'll get back to you. It's not crazy. That's the way we all are. We all have this inner dialogue and conversations with ourselves all the time. It means that we're engaged with ourselves. Right? By the way, in dating, it's the same thing. If you go on a date with someone and you have questions about them and you want to ask them those questions, so you're in at least for a second date. Right? But if you come back, from the date and you're like, I have no questions about that person. Date's over, right? No thanks. I'm done. I'm out. Because there's nothing more to explore. There's nothing more to see what evolves. I know exactly what's there, and I don't want to see any more, right? But if the person is intriguing, if the person says something interesting, right? I remember one of the conversations I had with my wife on our first date. She and I are both English majors, so we were talking about some sort of literary term that we learned in college, and it was interesting to me that she knew about it and I knew about it, and I was like, oh, I wonder what she thinks about that. I had these questions like, wonder what she would say about that. So that made me want to explore the relationship. And so too here, right? But Rabbi Nachman's saying on a deeper level, we have to be courageous and strong to stand at the tip of our consciousness and ask ourselves a tough question, and be prepared for something that's going to come out, something unexpected. Okay, so just to kind of recap, and then if we have any other questions or points or anything people want to bring up, you can feel free to do so. We first saw the insistence of, even from the Torah's perspective, the understanding that questions will arise and the importance of questions. We saw that continue through the Gemara, where the question of a child got us off on the right foot, so to speak, so that we could even skip part of the text. Got a little closer to dinner that way. We saw in the Rambam that even if one is by him or herself, they should really take the opportunity, and even if they know the whole story, right? Even if they know the whole story, they have to ask themselves a question. And we saw two answers in Chassidut. Number one, that we have to break ourselves from patterns, from norms, and we have to stand up and say, don't you see everything's different? There's an opportunity here. And Rav Sadok understands the opportunity to have a spiritual awakening, free ourselves from our narrow constraints on Seder night. And Rabbi Nachman shared with us that a she'ela, a question, opens up the possibility for something new to emerge from that space that's created by a question, even if that question is a difficult question and allows for something scary, unexpected to emerge. That's really the power, and that's really the freedom of Seder night. Okay, that's all I wanted to share with you guys. Any points, questions, blessings?
All of that so beautiful. I'm so with you on the rest of these sources, on the idea that questions do make things come out that you didn't know. In general, like if you talk to someone who's not Jewish and they ask you, why do you do this specific thing? We're used to not having to explain why sometimes, and having to being asked straight up and having to do that is really it shows you how you feel about something. So all very beautiful.
Beautiful. Thank you, Cher. Yeah, I remember a story at the Kotel. I think it was it was the first set of lulav and etrog that I bought. I think you guys know me well enough to know I didn't grow up in a religious home. And we never owned a lulav or etrog. I don't know if I saw one before I came to Israel. And so the first year I was here, I bought my lulav and etrog, went down to the Kotel, prayed with everyone there, packed. Such a hard reality to imagine. And as I was walking back up, there was a whole group of very lovely non-Jews who came for what they call the Feast of the Tabernacle. And one of them, a religious Christian couple, came up and said to me, I'll use my southern accent here, Sharon, if it's okay. You tell me if it's good. Can you tell me why you guys are waving the palm and the citron? What are you doing? It's like, and it is weird, right? Out of all the things that we do, in the Jewish tradition, waving the lulav and etrog, maybe doing this during Havdalah, that's also a cool one. The flamethrower on Pesach, I mentioned that one before. We do weird stuff. So, we're all shaking these things around. And I was like, I don't know. I'm not actually sure. I mean, I just got to Israel, bought one of these. Everyone's doing it, right? See people really get into it, right? You can, the guy who really is putting his kavanah into the shakes, right? I'm not really sure. But that question was an opening, and then I spent the rest of the holiday kind of looking into it, appreciating the reasoning behind it, and it opened up something within me. So yeah, absolutely. I ideally, we talked about having the Seder, with oneself, but ideally the question and answer is supposed to be the whole framework and everyone at the table kind of, engaging in that way. And that way opening up a dialogue as opposed to a monologue. And I know for myself, the best Seders that I've been to is where the person running the Seder is really good at getting the kids involved, getting everyone involved. There are a lot of ways to do this, not to go too far on a tangent, but one of the things that we really like to do, and I think it's great for kids of all ages, right? Even saying us older kids, so to speak, is to do little breakout hatzagot, little plays. One of my favorite ones is where the kids are the slave masters, and I get down on the floor with their blocks, and I'm building, and one takes the jump rope, and get to work, and the kids really get into it, and they feel like they're experiencing it, and it's fun too for the parents because you want your kids to be involved, you want your kids to be engaged. We throw little candies at the table. Anyone has a good question, right? We like gather questions, and not always do I answer the questions, but we do throw candy. Any kid that asks a good question, or really any question, depending on the age, they get a candy. And even the little kids, like, when our younger kids really didn't even understand that, they understood if you put the little inflection in your voice, you get a candy, right? So, they pick it up quickly. Like break it up, run around the table a little bit. One thing that we do that also really helps is that, especially now, no one's going to shul, right? Even for those of us that like to go to shul, that enjoy going to shul. So there's no shul. Oh, Xander was the OG. Xander, thanks for joining. Even for those of us that like going to shul, there's no shul. The shuls are closed. So one can start and pray early so that one can start Leila Seder right at the time called Tzeta Kochavim, the beginning of evening. If you check on the Chabad website or any of the websites, you can find out when nightfall is, and you could start it right then and there, right? So that way you can have a snack beforehand in the afternoon. That way people aren't just, super hungry and just, all right, let's get to the soup already. But, people have a little food in the afternoon, have a good snack in the afternoon. Start right at the time that you can, right at the onset of evening. Make kiddush right at that time, have everything ready and get ready to go. And, you can do the countdown, 10, 9, 8, right? And right at that time, you can, you go right into it. And that way people have energy and they're not hungry and they can really kind of get into it, act it out and dance around and jump around the table and pretend and, do that type of thing. I was just remembering one of the other things that we like to do is, the part where Am Yisrael has, they have a lot of babies. So we take one of our kids and stuff their shirt with dolls, and they come out and they, pull out the doll from the shirt. How many you have under there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So all these ways, and you can make trivia for your parents if it's an older group. If it's a group of young people like yourself. But I would suggest trying to sit down and put a little thought into trying to make it something engaging, trying to make it somehow, again, a dialogue and not a monologue for whoever's leading it. Anything else? Thank you guys so much for joining me, for smiling, for listening, for learning together. And I just want to bless us all with a Chag Kasher V'Sameach. Really a joyful holiday, a meaningful holiday. Obviously, the times are challenging, but I hope that it's meaningful and truly joyful for all of us. And I look forward to seeing everybody on the other side of the Red Sea. As the situation unfolds, we'll be continuing to do more shiurim like this, at least on a weekly basis. And we hope to stay connected with all you guys. So Chag Sameach. Thank you very, very much, everybody.
Shkoyach, Chag Sameach.
Thank you, Rabbi Udren. Chag Sameach.
Thank you.
Chag Sameach.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Bye, guys. Take care.
Chag Sameach.